to be educated, but I'm so frustrated.
Hey guys, before we go forward, I want to let you know I appreciate your support by watching these videos and stuff like that. Please make sure you subscribe and comment, like and share and all of that stuff. But I also want to let you know that we have something called Join. Most of you know what that is. You see the little Join button. It helps support the channel. Please consider and check it out. This is a good way to support what we're doing so we can continue to bring you good stuff and grow. Now back to the video. Yeah, man. You cannot talk about the history of American music, especially funk and R&B, without talking about control. Control of sound, control of rhythm, and control of technology. And nobody in the industry ever controlled machines the way Mr. Roger Troutman did. Long before auto-tune, before digital vocals, and before every producer wanted to all of a sudden be the star, there was a man from Southwest Ohio who figured out how to turn electricity into pure emotion. This is the real story of the king of the land of funk. And I don't just say that because it sounds good. Dayton, Ohio is officially recognized by music historians and the city itself as the land of funk because it birthed more funk legends per square mile than anywhere else on earth. And in that kingdom, to most people, Roger was the man, an undisputed ruler. Roger Troutman was born on November 29, 1951, in Hamilton, Ohio. He grew up on Washington Street, in a working-class neighborhood where today the street has been honorarily renamed Roger Troutman Street. That tells you everything you need to know about his impact. He was one of 10 children in a loud and crowded house where music was survival. Roger didn't stumble into genius. He studied it. At age 5, he gravitated toward music almost as soon as he could walk. His father promised him a guitar if he first learned to play his favorite songs on a borrowed instrument. Roger did and got his guitar, then fell deeply into the music of jazz legend Wes Montgomery. He taught himself Montgomery's specific thumb-picking guitar technique, which is why his arrangements were always precise and intentional. It would become funk with discipline. At age 11, Roger formed his first band called the Crusaders, then Lil Roger and the Vels by the mid-1960s. He was performing in local nightclubs and at talent shows as Lil Roger. To keep the noise out of the house, his father built a garage studio where they could practice. This space became the incubation chamber for the Dayton sound, heavily influenced by regional icons like the Ohio Players and his childhood friend Bootsy Collins. By the time he was a teenager in the late 60s, Roger was already leading his brothers in a band called Roger and the Human Body. At this stage, he wasn't all the way the talk box guy yet. He was a master of the standard guitar, the bass, and the keys. He and his older brother Larry formed a partnership early on. Larry was the businessman, while Roger was the creative engine. They were grinding, playing every club across the Midwest, building a name for themselves as a tight, professional outfit. During these early years of the 70s, Roger was building a life that was just as busy as his music. Though he was never legally married, he would eventually father a large family of 11 children that we know of, with several different women. Roger was a man with massive responsibilities and a lot of mouths to feed. He wasn't just working for fame, he was working to provide for a small army of Troutman heirs. That drive and the need to bring in the paper is what pushed him to look for a sound that would set him apart from everyone else on the radio. A sound that would come from a device called the talk box. But it wasn't until the mid to late 70s that he really started perfecting this talk box thing. While other guitarists like Peter Frampton used it as a side effect, Roger decided to make it the lead singer.
It just seemed to work, and I started using it on cover songs like Heard It Through the Grapevine. Yeah.
His setup sent the instrument sound through a tube into his mouth, where he shaped it with precise mouth movements in real time, creating the signature vocal-like tones that defined his funk sound. In 1976, Roger and the Human Body released the album Introducing Roger. It didn't explode, but it landed in the right hands. George Clinton and Bootsy Collins heard that futuristic Ohio grit.
Where I just performed everywhere, every kind of talent program, and did everything I could do to make it.
So, they brought Roger into the Parliament Funkadelic universe.
And they introduced me to the key people at Warner Brothers and gave me total freedom in the studio, paid for everything.
And that is where the band became Zapp. They chose that name because Bootsy and George decided the band needed a name more futuristic than Roger and the Human Body. Bootsy had known the Troutman family since he was a child and knew Roger's younger brother Terry, who was nicknamed Zapp, because he was always so hyped. So they went with Zapp because it also captured the raw energy the band put out during their performance. But even though they started out fine under Clinton, there would be tension early. Zapp was expected to stay under George Clinton's label, but Roger and Larry made a business decision to take the group to Warner Brothers instead. That move caused a rift with the P-Funk camp, but it gave the Troutman brothers ownership of their own destiny. Then, in 1980, came the record that changed the game and a big part of the world. Brother, More Bounce to the Ounce wasn't just a hit, it was a blueprint. This song was a massive funk hit and signature song for Roger and Zapp, peaking at number 2 on the Billboard R&B singles chart and 86 on the Billboard Hot 100.
I have to say, after Mo Bounce, my life changed. It was just groovy from that point on.
That track was the lead single from their self-titled debut album called Zapp. Bootsy Collins co-produced, while Roger laid down the funk with the moog bass and chanking guitar licks. This thing was funky as a polecat in heat, and that song never left the culture to this day. That's the groove that will have somebody's grandma embarrassing themselves at the cookout. It became one of the most sampled funk records in history. What you have to understand, that sound wasn't just born in Dayton. It was cooked up in Detroit at United Sound Systems, where Roger was working side by side with George Clinton and the Parliament Funkadelic crew. But the crazy thing was that Warner Brothers was watching what was happening and saw the star power in Roger. They then offered him a deal on tracking solo work that he couldn't refuse. And therefore came the 1981 release, So Rough, So Tough, from that solo project. It was a masterclass in that stuttering guitar and heavy bass that hit number 5 on the R&B charts. That solo success gave him the ultimate leverage. With the success of that first album, Roger and Larry didn't just buy jewelry, they invested in the empire. In 1982, they founded Troutman Sound Labs on Salem Avenue in Dayton. This was a state-of-the-art facility where Roger could work 20 hours a day. He continued like a one-man production unit in this lab, playing most of the parts himself because he had a specific pocket in his head that nobody else could replicate. Even though the band had reservations about that, they would get their shine in the shows, along with Roger, his stage presence and charisma, which came straight from the church. All that was again on full display in 1983 when the band released Zapp 3. The lead single, I Can Make You Dance, became another top 5 R&B anthem. It was faster and more aggressive than More Bounce, leaning into a futuristic electro-funk sound that dominated the clubs. But even as the dance floor stayed packed, Roger was looking for a way to prove he could do more than just make people move. He wanted to make them feel too. And by 1986, Roger would give the world another masterpiece, and one they could feel.
Baby, you're my computer love.
Yeah, man, and it hit number 1 for 6 weeks. And if you don't know, Computer Love featured Shirley Murdoch and Charlie Wilson.
We was on the road all the time together, and we was like rivals, really, on the stage. But me and Roger was like really, really close friends. He called me about 3 o'clock in the morning after one of these shows, and he woke me up like this. Man, I got this. Come on, guys, you gotta come down here. I was like, man, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. He said, come on. I said, all right. I went down there, and then I didn't know what to do because this label, I know they're gonna trip out. Everybody's gonna freak out because I'm singing with Zapp. And he went, Computer Love. I was like, Computer Love, oh yeah. Oh man, he was like, and every time I sing a lick, he just reach and give me some money, like $50 or $10, and he bunch of ones. He was crazy. My Roger held on to the record for about 2 years. And when he put the record out, man, it's just too hard.
And Roger at that time had discovered Shirley Murdoch singing gospel in a local church and proved a singer could be spiritual, sophisticated, and soulful all at the same time. Now, outside the studio, Roger and Larry were finally realizing their dream of an empire. Along with having Troutman Sound Labs, they also built housing in the community, ran a limousine service, and Roger even owned a farm where he lived like a cowboy. This dude tried to employ everyone from his neighborhood because he believed in building up his own community first. But as we always see, success brings a different kind of pressure and mindset. Roger worked non-stop, often 20 hours a day, but he had to finish the 80s on top. In 1987, he released his most successful solo album, Unlimited, which featured the massive hit, I Wanna Be Your Man. That track hit #1 on the R&B charts and climbed all the way to #3 on the Billboard Hot 100. This thing was simply riding out. It proved that Roger could evolve with the times. While the music was hitting, Roger was also mentoring the next generation. His eldest son, Roger Lynch, Troutman Jr., was a musician who performed as Lil Roger and released his own album, A Pinch of Lynch, in 1989. Roger was grooming him to take over the family sound. By 1991, Roger released his final solo project, Bridging the Gap, where he collaborated with everyone from Eazy-E to Elvis Costello. He was the connective tissue between the funk of the 70s and the hip-hop of the 90s. Roger was the elder statesman. When Dr. Dre needed a hook for Tupac, he called the master California Love. That talkbox voice became the sound of an entire coast.
If it wasn't for Tupac and Dr. Dre, I would have never made it to MTV. I mean, they really put my sound sort of into a whole different realm of fans.
But behind the scenes, the empire was secretly crumbling. Roger and his brother Larry were always close, and Larry had been managing the business part for decades. But unknown to Roger, Larry was flubbing a few things up and had filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy for Troutman Enterprises without telling him. Roger was touring and performing his heart out, believing everything was all right and that they were building wealth for the family, while the company was actually drowning in debt. When Roger finally demanded to see the books early one Sunday morning, the tension between the brothers exploded. On April 25, 1999, outside the studio on Salem Avenue, Larry Troutman shot Roger multiple times and left him in an alley before driving away, crashing into a tree, and then taking his own life with a gunshot. This was devastating. The land of funk lost its king in one breezy morning.
I personally didn't want to do music. And in fact, I didn't even want to be in the industry anymore. To be honest, that's how down I was about it.
It was next to impossible to do. I mean, if you imagine losing your right arm.
It's been 16 years.
It's been 16 years. Imagine losing your right arm at that time and trying to perform and pick up and go, man. It was next to impossible. The telephone calls and the letters and the love and the prayers.
Yes.
And the fans. Of course, all of the fans out there, man, we were able to just reach inside ourselves and ultimately look to God. Because without God, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
It was a melodrama that ended in a Shakespearean nightmare. Two brothers who built an empire together, all gone over alleged greed and pride. Roger was now gone, but unfortunately, the tragedy for the Troutman family didn't stop there. Roger Jr. suffered a severe head injury from an alleged assault in late 2002 that left him in a coma where he passed away shortly after, at 32 years old. Then in 2012, another son, Brent Lanier Lynch, was arrested for the death of his ex-girlfriend and sentenced to more than 30 years in prison. Tragically, the hardships even continued into the next generation, when in 2020, Roger's granddaughter, the rising rapper Lexi Alege, died from an accidental drug overdose at 21. Man, that's a lot of tragedy connected to just one man. Now, after the deaths of Roger and Larry Troutman in 1999, the studio sat dormant for years and eventually fell into disrepair, but it has become and marked as a historical site. And fortunately, today Roger's legacy is everywhere. In the auto-tune, the vocal processors, and the hip-hop hooks. A street bears his name, murals depict his likeness, and historical markers identify his greatness, plus his sound is permanent in recordings. And with all that happened, at the end of the day, Roger proved he could be technological, musical, business-minded, a family provider, and also be one of the funkiest men to ever do music. Roger Troutman didn't just follow the future, he helped build it.